Alright guys, welcome back to Holes by Sachar. As we're reading through this book, we're realizing one of the main themes in this story is judging people based on how they look like, or based on our first impressions of them. We're seeing that a lot in this book. We see that in the previous chapter with the story about Sam and how people judged him or didn't give him the same laws or rights because he was black. We see that in this story a lot, though, with other characters. Zero is deemed stupid, dumb, doesn't know anything. He's just there. He's a nothing. Zero's nothing. Zero's nothing. Zero is not nothing. Nobody is nothing, ever. And the more we get to know Zero, the more we realize Zero's had a really rough life, with not a lot of options or opportunities, and yet with just a little bit of opportunity, with just a little bit of teaching from Stanley, we can see that Zero is really, really bright and can figure things out. We see that going on in this story a lot. I guess it is that theme of sometimes being the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe that means not only about luck, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but maybe that has something to do with the people around you, society around you, of society not treating all humans the same, or viewing all humans as being positive and having great value and great worth. And instead we put humans, we line them up just like when the boys line up to get their water, and how x-rays in the front, and then it goes x-ray, and then after x-ray comes so and so and so and so and so and so, and then at the very end there's Stanley and Zero, because they're not deemed as important or as powerful. It's a big theme here in Holes, with people who take their power because they have power for whatever reason. If it's power because you had white skin and you could afford to have the fast boat, or if it was power because you're the warden and you have power over all the boys that are at your juvenile prison for them to do work for you. It's kind of interesting. What gives power? All right, chapter 27, guys, page 116 in my book. Here we go. Back to Stanley. Stanley dug his shovel into the ground. His hole was about 3.5 feet deep in the center. He grunted as he pried up some dirt, then flung it off to the side. The sun was almost directly overhead. He glanced at his canteen lying beside his hole. He knew it was half full, but he didn't take a drink just yet. He had to drink sparingly, because he didn't know who would be driving the water truck the next time it came. 3 days had passed since the warden had scratched Mr. Sir. Every time Mr. Sir delivered water, he poured Stanley straight onto the ground. Fortunately, Mr. Pendanski delivered the water more often than Mr. Sir. Mr. Pendanski was obviously aware of what Mr. Sir was doing, because he always gave Stanley a little extra. He'd fill Stanley's canteen, then let Stanley take a long drink, then top it off for him. That's nice of Mr. Pendanski. It helped, too, that Zero was digging some of Stanley's hole for him. Although, as Stanley had expected, the other boys didn't like to see Stanley sitting around while they were working. They'd say things like, "Who died and made you king?" Or, "It must be nice to have your own personal slave." When he tried pointing out that he was the one who took the blame for the sunflower seeds, the other boys said it was his fault because he was the one who spilled them. "I risked my life for those seeds," Magnet had said. and all I got was one lousy handful. Stanley had also tried to explain that he needed to save his energy so he could teach Zero how to read, but the other boys just mocked him. "Same old story, ain't it, Armpit?" X-Ray had said. "The white boy sits around while the black boy does all the work. Ain't that right, caveman?" "No, that's not right," Stanley replied. "No, it ain't," X-Ray agreed. "It ain't right at all." Stanley dug out another shovelful of dirt. He knew X-Ray wouldn't have been talking like that if he was the one teaching Zero to read. Then X-Ray would be talking about how important was that he got his rest, right? So he could be a better teacher, right? And that was true. He did need to save his strength so he could be a better teacher, although Zero was a quick learner. Sometimes, in fact, Stanley hoped the warden was watching them with her secret cameras and microphones so she'd know that Zero wasn't as stupid as everyone thought. From across the lake, he could see the approaching dust cloud. He took a drink from his canteen, then waited to see who was driving the truck. The swelling on Mr. Sir's face had gone down, but it was still a little puffy. There had been 3 scratch marks down his cheek. 2 of the marks had faded, but the middle scratch must have been the deepest because it still remained. It was a jagged purple line running from below his eye to below his mouth, like a tattoo of a scar. Stanley waited in line, then handed him his canteen. Mr. Sir held it up to his ear and shook it. He smiled at the swishing sound. Stanley hoped he wouldn't dump it out. To his surprise, Mr. Sir held the canteen under the stream of water and filled it. "Wait here," he said. Still holding Stanley's canteen, Mr. Sir walked past him, then went around the side of the truck and into the cab, where he couldn't be seen. "What's he doing in there?" asked Zero. "I wish I knew," said Stanley. A short while later, Mr. Sir came out of the truck and handed Stanley his canteen. It was still full. "Thank you, Mr. Sir." Mr. Sir smiled at him. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "Drink up." He popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, chewed, and spit out the shells. Stanley was afraid to drink. He hated to think what kind of vile substance Mr. Sir might have put in it. He brought the canteen back to his hole. For a long time, he left it beside his hole as he continued to dig. Then, when he was so thirsty that he could hardly stand it anymore, he unscrewed the cap, turned the canteen over, and poured it all out onto the dirt. He was afraid that if he waited another second, he might have taken a drink. After Stanley taught Zero the final 6 letters of the alphabet, he taught him to write his name. Capital Z-E-R-O. Zero wrote the letters as Stanley said them. "Zero," he said, looking at his piece of paper. His smile was too big for his face. Stanley watched him write it over and over again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. In a way, it made him sad. He couldn't help but think that 100 times 0 was still nothing. "You know, that's not my real name," Zero said as they headed to the rec room for dinner. "Well, yeah," Stanley said. "I guess I knew that." He had never really been sure. "Everyone's always called me Zero, even before I came here." "Oh, okay." "My real name is Hector." "Hector," Stanley repeated. "Hector Zeroni." Who else had this last name Zeroni? Do you remember? Do you remember way back when we were learning the story about great-great-grandpa and how he was going to wanted to marry Myra, I think it was. And so he went to see the lady. Oh my goodness, the lady who told him to go carry the piglet up the hill. Oh, let's see if we can find that. And her name was Zeroni. Oh my goodness, where is it? Here's about Madame Zeroni. And she had told Elia back then, Stanley's great-great-grandfather, that she had some sons that went to America. I wonder if Hector Zeroni is related to her. Be interesting to know. So Zero's name is not Zero, it's Hector. Hector Zeroni, that is his name. And so it seems like everything is connected in this story. So we have Hector Zeroni, and let's see what this leads to further in the story. All right, guys, take care. Loving this book.